For this demonstration, you are going to be learning the color blending technique we're going to use with colored pencils to color in our pattern once we finish it. If you are not in a class that is creating a pattern or has started to create a pattern, you will still be using this technique but just on a different drawing assignment. For this assignment and for this color blending technique, the main thing to remember is that you always want to have a light and a dark color. Rather than just coloring in these shapes that you see here in this stained glass window design with solid colors, we are going to use two different colors and try to blend them together. For example, a light blue and a dark blue or purple, possibly an orange and a red, orange being the lighter color, red being the darker color. You could also try yellow as a lighter color and green as a darker color. So those are some of the combinations and some of the pairs that I'm going to use today. The first step when you are doing this color blending is to start with the lightest color. It's kind of a pattern. You go light and then dark, light and then dark again. So to start off with, you just want to fill in the shapes fairly quickly with your lightest color. I'm not pressing down very hard. I'm just quickly filling in the shape, trying to stay inside the lines, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I'm going to do all of the circles blue and use the same technique, so I'll just go ahead and color all of them in. As older students at the school, I don't expect to see scribble scrabble here. I don't expect to see that you just went like this and tried to fill it in quickly. I want to see that you're actually taking your time. You're trying to be careful to fill it in as fully as you can, but also making sure that you work quickly enough that you can finish most of, if not all, of this stained glass window. Okay? So first step is your lightest color. Fill in all of the shapes that you want to use this color combination on with your lightest color, and then you can set it to the side. Now pick up your darker color, and this time you're going to very lightly, I'm not pressing down hard, I'm only going to go around the edges of my shape. Only around the edges with my darker color, which in this case is a purple. Not being as careful this time, but I'm also not doing a super thin line. I still want it to be fairly thick around the edges because I want to be able to see it. This is not the end. This is only the second step of 4 steps that I'm going to take. And even though this may already look a little bit better than what you would normally color on your own, if you were just given a blank piece of paper and some colored pencils, if you follow through with me to the 4th step and do all 4 of them correctly and take your time, it's really going to look nice on here. A lot better than any other colored pencil drawing you've probably ever done. Alright, so I've added my dark just around the edges of the shape. Now I'm going to pick up my light pencil again. But this time I'm going to press down a little bit harder. I really want to try to cover up all of my white areas a little better this time. And notice that I'm going over the purple. It's not completely canceling it out. That's why we want to use a darker color around the edges, because we want the blue and the purple to blend together. I still want to be able to see the blue, but I also still want to have those dark purple edges. Notice that I'm not really holding my pencil upright like a pencil. I'm holding it on its side, and a lot of times that keeps the tip from breaking off, which is always a good thing. That way you don't have to sharpen it as often. And that also helps you cover the area a little bit quicker when you hold it on its side instead of holding it upright like a regular pencil. Just to show a contrast and to see how different the circles look, I'm going to leave these at step 2 instead of moving on to step 4. I'm just going to leave them at step 2. And hopefully that'll show you how much better it looks when you actually follow through to step 4 instead of trying to rush through and forgetting about the 3rd and 4th step. Okay, so that was my third step, using my lighter color, going over the whole thing again, pressing down a little bit harder this time. And my fourth and final step is to use my dark color again. Remember, light, dark, dark. That's the pattern you want to use. And the other thing I'm going to change this last time, instead of doing those straight lines again around the edges, this time I'm going to use circular lines. Really small, tight curlicues. Since I've got a lot of the light blue on there, I'm having to press down fairly hard with my purple pencil. But I don't want it to be super, super, super dark. I just want it to be very subtle. I want there to be a very subtle dark edge to each one of these circles. I don't want to see a really hard line right here. I just want them to kind of blend in with each other. So press down hard enough that you can see the color going onto the paper, but not so hard that your dark colors around the edges are overwhelming. This is very similar to what we did with our eye paintings. That was one of the first paintings that we ever did. When we colored the iris, the colored part of the eye, we tried to make it a little bit darker around the edges and a little bit lighter in the middle. Same concept, same process, just a different art tool. Instead of using the marker watercolor paints, we're using colored pencils, but still trying to create the darker edge around the outside and the lighter edge on the inside. And I think you can probably already see how much better these circles look than these, because I actually took the time to follow through to the fourth step. Last one, and then I'll show you a couple, maybe just one more color combination. Not because I'm trying to bore you to death and put you to sleep, but because the more times you see something, the more likely you'll remember it. Repetition is the best teacher, because if you see it or hear it over and over again, you're going to start to remember it and you're going to start to believe it. That's why it's always important to be very careful about the things that you say and the things that you do, because in all aspects of life, you want to make sure that you make good choices and do the same positive things over and over again so that you remember them and get in the habit of doing them. Alright, so I'll try my yellow and my green together. Let's see how that looks. I'll do these lines coming off. Maybe I'll skip around. Maybe I'll do yellow and green on these two and then the orange and red here. These aren't very big shapes, so these ought not take me long. Alright, yellow is my lightest color. Fill that in quickly. Go around just the edges, not pressing down very hard. Just around the edges with my green. Just to get it started so I kind of know where it is and give it a base. Third step, go over everything a little bit harder, even the parts that I just colored green, with my yellow pencil. Really trying to make it nice and solid, nice and smooth, covering up all those little white spots that I didn't get the first time. And then last step is to go back to my darker color and do the smaller circles. This green is a pretty dark green compared to that yellow, so I'm barely pressing down. I'm really not putting a whole lot of pressure on this pencil at all, because I still want it to blend in really smooth. I don't want it to be too overwhelming, but just doing my little tiny circles all the way around the edge. As you go around the edges with the circles, the part that's really light, that shows your yellow spots, your yellow parts, that's going to kind of slowly disappear. You're not going to have a lot of it left. Same thing happened with my blue here. But just trust the process. That's why you're practicing on this little handout, so that you can kind of figure out what color combinations you like the best. You can figure out how much pressure you have to use on the pencil to get the effects that you want. You can figure out how thick you want the darker edges to be before you actually start coloring your own pattern. Let me see if I can quickly do these. just so that we have 3 different colors to look at, color combinations. Alright, orange is my lightest color between the two, so I'm going to fill that in first, just to get my base going. Red around the edges. Alright, and then finally, pressing down a little bit harder this time, going over everything with my orange again, really trying to cover everything up, make sure it doesn't look like Scribble Scrabble anymore, make sure it's actually covered up, and all those little white spots that were poking through before are covered with my orange. We want this to look like the work of one of the oldest, most mature, most experienced art students in the school, not like a kindergartner. And then last step. Doing little circles just around the edge. Alright, and there you have it. Obviously I didn't finish the whole thing, I didn't do my 3rd and 4th step here, and I've got lots of other shapes to go with. But this is your time to practice the technique, this is the time to get really good at it so it looks nice and smooth. Check out Ms. Speck's example on the bulletin board if you need to make sure that you know how finished it should look. Use your time wisely, practice as much as you need to, and as many color combinations as you want to. Next week we can actually start applying this to our final drawing.